I'm just going to preface by saying that I live next to a main road, so I apologise in advance. Hi, my name is Stanley. I'm an engineering student at the Queensland University of Technology, and for about the last 3 years, I have spent all of my spare time developing VESC one wheels. I started with low-cost, unrefined builds following the early content from Fungineers on YouTube, and since then I have developed my own custom high-spec competitive system, which you can see here in the VOW custom. The purpose of this video is to break down 3 unique systems which allow this board to exist. The first and most important system that we'll cover is the spacer system, as this is what allows the high-spec battery and controller to function. When the One Wheel XR was released in 2018, it innovated on the One Wheel Plus by extending the battery casing out below the rails to allow for extra battery volume and added range. The VOW spacer system does exactly the same thing, except instead of extending out of the bottom of the rails, it extends out of the top into the footpad volume. Stock XR footpads like this one here have a thickness of about 7mm. In contrast, the spacer system here uses 6mm strips of plastic along the top of the rails and then a footpad placed on top that is only 1mm thick. This opens up the volume inside the footpad to allow you to have an increased size battery pack and controller casing. And it allows this increase in volume without increasing the thickness of your board or reducing clearance. Of course, with these spacers, you could just have simple solid plastic that is a single color, or you can do what I've done and print them out of clear PETG and then fill them with the most amount of lights ever used on a one wheel, at least that I've seen. This is what I'm calling the ring and rail light system. As you can see, there are rail lights which are at the front and back sections, and then ring lights which sit inside the hub motor. Now we will open the board up to go over the internal designs of the controller and the battery. Starting with the controller, all other designs for one-wheel controllers use a 2-piece system, usually a heatsink and then a casing section. This design is the first to use a 3-part system, that being a lid, a wall section, and a heatsink. The reason I've gone about this design is because it secures easy accessibility to the VESC and all of the internal components of your controller, whilst also being low cost to manufacture. To get more specific with the 3 components, the lid here, which is the topmost component, is available in 2 sizes. One thicker size if you're looking towards using spacers at the front, which would be necessary for a ring and rail light system, or a normal thinner version which makes the controller the same thickness as any other VESC controller. The wall section in the middle uses a variety of input pieces, which allows you to swap in and out what kind of plugs you're using depending on your setup, without having to change your entire controller. Then the aluminium heatsink at the base. This is a 3mm thick plate which is bolted to the bottom side of the rails at the front of your board, allowing for conductive heat transfer. There is also a gap between the heatsink and the bumper. You can either put an additional 3mm thick plate there, or it allows for airflow between the bumper and the heatsink through the handle. Another component of the controller inside the wall is the LED driver. I'll make this available as a separate system. This allows for an input of up to 120 volts and can power the entire lighting array on this board super easily. It runs with an ESP32 controller and supports the WLED system, which makes for super easy programming and customization of your lights. That's a pretty decent summary of the controller system so far, and now we'll get onto the battery. The VOW battery pack is easily the biggest technical achievement of this board design. It is the first 20S 2P battery pack designed for the One Wheel XR frame that uses 21700 cells. The end result of this is an 84 volt pack with 600 or more watt hours of capacity. Not only that, but this pack is done so in a way that doesn't compromise on the strength of the casing or the padding on the inside of the pack. It has pulled off this design and specification by taking full use of the volume inside the spaces in the tail of the board, but also by being the first one-wheel battery pack to be constructed laterally. What this means is that the orientation of the battery cells is placed in parallel with the bolts of the casing. This drastically optimizes the volume use inside your battery pack and results in an extremely high strength, but high power and high capacity system. The casing is also compatible with any one-wheel sized 20S BMS, that being a BMS like Joey's ZBMS or the new Fungineer's Smart BMS. All of those BMS systems will be able to fit into the tail of the casing. However, as one-wheel sized BMSs are proving difficult to obtain, I've also developed an external BMS system which plugs into the tail with a DB25 connector. Having an external BMS also plays into the next feature, that being that this battery pack is swappable. As this pack is entirely located within the single side of your board's tail, it means that all you have to do is remove the bumper, appropriately disconnect your power cable, and then you can swap your battery out for a fresh one. This means that you can go on extremely long rides by simply carrying a second battery pack with you and having then up to 1200 watt hours of capacity. Speaking of bumpers, this battery is designed to work with lightly modified bang bumpers. All you have to do is square off the edges of the corners of your bang bumper, which is a very, very easy mod to do and only takes a couple of minutes. As there are so many configurations for this battery pack, that being permanent or swappable configurations with different types of BMS systems, I will only be making this battery pack available through my commission system. I'm currently working on that system and it should be available as soon as I can get it done. That way you can simply detail what options you're after out of this battery pack and then I can make it for you appropriately. I'm yet to finalize things like final prices and every option that'll be available, and I'm sure there are still a lot of questions about the full functionality of this system, but I'll be making a lot more content about it over the next couple of weeks as I'm leading up to that commission system being functional. That will pretty much do it for this entire breakdown video. We've gone through the spacer system, which makes this board unique. We've gone through the controller, all of its available configurations and how it works. And we've gone through this battery system, which is the most powerful system to date for the one-wheel XR frame. If you have burning questions, feel free to drop comments and reach out to me personally with messages.